Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davies, head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in. Welcome everybody for the first Octopod podcast. Now today we're going to be talking about whether the world has gone hybrid, and the key things here for you to take away is going to be the terminology so that we're all on the same page, whether people are going hybrid or is it just a message that's being thrown around in the public domain, the complexities of moving to that hybrid kind of state from a platform and people perspective. Then also, is there a benefit, and has the technology moved on to allow us to go to a hybrid working model? So today I'm joined by Rob Sims and Tim Russell from the Office of the CTO. So let's dive straight into the first kind of question. I think this is for you, Rob, really, which is, let me just level set on some of the terminology so we're all on the same page with regards to what is a cloud, what is a next-gen data center, what is edge and native, and all these kind of things that we see out there. Can you just give us a bit of a summary so we're all on the same page as we go over the next 15 to 20 minutes?
Yeah, certainly. And I think we have to sort of draw them baselines really clearly so we're having the same conversations. I think we all probably understand what that sort of enterprise IT function is that we've been working with for the last 20 or 30 years, that very monolithic, static, silent type operating model that has not really allowed organizations to scale and operate at the speed that they needed to. And really that was what I think perpetuated this move to cloud, because of that infrastructure being so monolithic in its nature, etc. Didn't give that agility when cloud was offering, public cloud, 10, 15 years ago was offering that agility level. I think today, though, we see things in two buckets. If you're looking to store data and run virtual machines, the reality is that a next-gen data center with modern technologies is likely to be the most economic place to execute them environments, and we can get to the nuances of what we mean by that later on. And if you're looking to build modern applications or have that instant scale and availability in global reach, then a cloud operating model, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be based on one of the hyperscaler cloud providers, is the approach we think you should be looking at as an organization. So there's that really easy definition. Is it modern applications and business scale and agility into new markets, or is it about the cost-effective running of traditional workloads that you may have had for the last 10 or 15 years? And that can help you very much focus on where to put your time and investment and research. But really that then comes into this conversation of what is a cloud. And really, there are two core definitions that we want to have there. One is, what is a private cloud, i.e. an automated set of infrastructure that is consumed by a single organization. Now, that could be on-premises, it could be a location, or it could be provided by a partner like ourselves. It's still a platform consumed by just a single organization. Or we could have the term of a public cloud, which is an ecosystem of technology consumed by multiple people in a multi-tenant fashion. Again, that is traditionally mostly known as the hyperscalers, your AWS, Amazons, Azures, etc., but could also be partner provided, like our own ServiceWorks platform, which is multi-tenant, so would class as a public cloud in the modern definition. The important part for this session, though, is understanding where these extra terms come in. And we've talked about this, Kyle, haven't we, where people are throwing all sorts of words in front of the word cloud, trying to make it sound like it's something new and fantastic, etc. But the three that I think are of most interest here are hybrid, multi, and super. And Kyle, I know you'll probably disagree with the super one, but I'll let you comment on that in a second. So multi-cloud is dead simple. I have multiple different clouds, different locations, but they're not operating under a single unified model. Yeah. So you've got different operating models, different processes, different procedures, different teams, different technologies in each of them different areas, providing complexity and challenge in a lot of cases. A hybrid cloud for us is then when we combine a private and a public cloud environment, but with a consistent operating model. So you have that data mobility, workload mobility, and consistent operations. And finally, whatever you want to call it, super cloud, meta cloud, adaptive cloud, or whatever, is how do we make multiple public clouds work together as a single operating model?
Yeah, and I think I wrote an article many years back on cloud, and more cloud. Put the word before or after cloud, and you're going to get something different, right? And I think we have moved on a little bit with regards to the terminology. So super cloud being, as you just mentioned before, the likes of industry clouds, which are basically all of the cloud types you've just mentioned, apart from they are designed to provide a service to a specific sector, whether that's healthcare or retail and things like that. And then Meta Cloud, again, is just another version of super cloud, just on steroids at that point, around how do we bring all this stuff together in a meaningful way. But I think if we kind of go into that a bit more, right, and I know we've had conversations with customers recently at our advisory boards around, has the world gone hybrid from a platform perspective? Or is it just a marketing message for us to think about moving towards a hybrid approach? Because, there's going to be people out here that are listening to this podcast going, this isn't relevant to me because what I've got works fine and I don't need to change what I'm doing. So maybe you could just give a bit of perspective there for us.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one that it depends on where you are in your journey, when you started this journey to, in inverted commas, cloud, as to what your view on this will be. And also, how well did you do that journey in the first place? If you picked up what you had on premises and dropped it on a public cloud provider and expected something massively different to happen, you've possibly sat there thinking, is my bill hard to understand? Have I had to spin up a FinOps team to manage all this stuff? So I've changed one set of complexity and cost for another set of complexity and cost, and maybe I'm thinking of doing something different. And we see lots of examples of then sorts of customers then looking at, do I need to move certain workloads, certain data sets back to a private cloud model because they are static, they're a bit more monolithic, and they can gain the benefit of, depreciation of assets over multiple years and don't need that instant scale capability that our hyperscaler cloud providers bring, versus some of our more advanced customers that have really embraced that cloud native operating model, DevOps model, are taking advantage of that instant scale down. They've seen massive benefits to moving their workloads to cloud and would never consider going hybrid in any way, shape or form. So a lot of it depends on maturity level and when you started that journey, but also a lot of it will start to be driven by the edge conversation. So we start to need to collect data at source. That stuff doesn't always happen in the public cloud. So when we start to look at then collecting data at the edge, in a manufacturing site, in a smart office, in a city, but then processing that for real-time analytics at the edge and then sending metadata back to a central public cloud provider, then we start to see where hybrid has a real value to many organizations. And actually, we'll hear the term cloud reversal, but I'm actually not sure it's really reversal. It's more adding new workloads in the right place to deliver the business value.
Yeah, I think it was in maybe mid 2023. There was an article that came out from Amazon Prime Video, right, where they outlined that they moved back to being a monolith for the Prime Video platform as an architecture, and that showed a 90% cost reduction, right? And I think let's just unpack that a little bit, because some people will be going, so what you're telling me, Kyle, is to stay as we are? And I'm like, no, not quite. But what I'm actually saying here, if you just Google search that, and you'll find, if you just do Amazon Prime Video 9% cost reduction, you'll find it on your favorite search engine. What they actually found is that the storage costs were scaling out of control because of the way that they were doing video quality analysis and getting all the metrics to be able to do what they do for scale up and scale down. But what they actually found is that Prime Video had a massive increase in subscribers and followership and utilization, and then it plateaued out for quite a while. And actually what that plateau meant, they were paying a premium for something that they could do consistent service operations against on a more monolith platform, which would be more effective for them in a cost-effective way. So they actually moved to that kind of that model to save money, because they got to the point of not needing that agility, right, that a modern application and public cloud capability can provide. And you got to also bear in mind that the company that owns Prime Video is Amazon, which also has Amazon Web Services as a cloud platform. So there's a little bit of humor behind it there, I suppose. But that's just like one example, I think, that really underpins to what you were saying there. The right workload, right platform, and understanding the way your applications and data is going to be used to allow you to be regulatory compliant or scalable, agile, or not in some cases, right? And I think that's where capturing those requirements, understanding an organization's desires and futures is really key.
100%. One organization will be 100% right to be fully in the public cloud with 100% of their workloads. The next organization will be right to be 100% on premises or in colo, and the next one will be somewhere in between. And there's no catch-all method now. And I think the best thing I've seen over the last 12, 18 months is this evolution of the cloud-first strategy to what it probably should have been all along, which is cloud first, but not cloud only. As in, let's make the right assumption and put the workload in the right place. And the anecdotal funny conversation I've been having with customers recently is, if mainframe's the right answer, why wouldn't you do it? Just because it goes against all of the traditional stereotypes of today. But to be clear, I'm not saying there's very many cases where that would be right, but if it really was, why wouldn't you do it? Just because everyone else is doing something different. And it's being really brave to assess the capabilities of modern technology and make decisions that will allow you to grow your business at the speed and pace it needs and deliver the value that's right for you. And that's really what it typically says is our right platform piece that you mentioned before, Kyle. It's not being tied to any one outcome.
Yeah, I think let's be really clear, right? If we're a non-technical person within a business, there's only really three things, and you've heard me say this many times, right, that a business is focused on. And yes, there's other important KPIs and metrics and things that they want to deliver as an organization, whether that's saving people's lives in healthcare or driving more charitable donations to cure cancer or whatever it might be. But the actual fundamentals to allow those things to take place or to allow your business to do whatever it is it's meant to do is three things: increase in revenue or income, ultimately, and a decrease in cost. Right? There are two things there. And then the third one then is to delight your consumer, whether that's an internal stakeholder or whether that's an external individual or customer that's going to be taking services from you. So everything we do, whether it's from a hybrid perspective or a single private cloud approach or whatever it might be, we need to have in our mind, is it increasing income or revenue? Is it decreasing cost? Or is it going to allow me to delight my customers in a much better way than we have done previously? Because if it's not doing one of those three things, to really question whether we should be doing it or not, right? I just want to bring Tim into the conversation for a second, because we kind of just quickly covered some of the cloud terms and what's been going on from a messaging perspective at a platform level around the world going to hybrid. But from a user perspective and workspace, what we've seen there just at a really high level, because I'm conscious we've got another episode after this one, which we're going to dive into the working models of today.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really interesting listening to that. It's the high level perspective is the world has gone hybrid. We look at our own working patterns. It's just not just recently, but for some time. And I think, Rob, a lot of the changes you were describing were driven by a change in customer or end user experience and the way they operate. Yet the single monolithic building where they could build a data center in the basement and provision all the capability to their staff are gone because the staff aren't always in the building. But now the staff are remote. They can't just VPN into your building. They have multiple applications, multiple data sources, and they want it and they need it to work reliably wherever and whenever they are. There isn't one size fits all, which is where I think hybrid is a term that ties into this, is how we work has fundamentally changed because the devices or the plethora of devices we use means that we need to have a back end or a support that allows us to use any device, anytime, any place, anywhere, securely and reliably.
Yeah, but we'll jump into the complexity thing that you just mentioned in a moment. But just to kind of round off, is it a marketing message or is it a actual perspective we have seen? It might be just worth just all of us giving a bit of a very brief opinion. So my view here is that a lot of our larger enterprise multinational customers, right, are hybrid. And if anything, they're edging towards the terminology of super cloud, where they are really trying to push the boundaries of capability to deliver the services they have. When I look at UK domestic-based organisations, though, which you could say is mid-market, low-end enterprise, SMB, there's more of a kind of a mindset of a single approach is good enough. So that could be a on-prem data center, it could be a colo location, rather than having that hybrid kind of model. I also think that it depends on whether your organisation is building a service or whether you are buying a service, right? So that build versus buy economics. Because if you're a new organization today, you don't need all the legacy infrastructure we used to have around virtual machines and things, because you probably wouldn't build a payroll web server with a database. You would probably buy a SaaS platform that did that for you, right? Which would reduce that overhead as well. So that's my personal perspective. I think there's a lot of good use cases for hybrid and integrating edge into that kind of core operating model. But I feel that it's very use case dependent and depending on the way you are trying to grow and scale your business. Rob, to you?
Yeah, 100% scale, you said at the end, is the important piece there. You know, if 85, 90% of your estate is fit for public cloud, the cost of putting 10% on-prem is going to be ridiculous. If you've only got a small amount of stuff, then splitting it between two locations is going to add complexity and costs. So therefore, you're going to say, actually, yes, maybe 15% of my estate is inefficient in public cloud, but overall, the solution is more efficient than having two environments. So the scale of your organization, the nature of your organization, to your point, Carl, is it off-the-shelf apps running in VMs, or are you building new apps in DevOps areas, or are you consuming SaaS? It's going to really drive your strategy. But I think long-term, most organizations will probably end up with an element of a public cloud as a service multi-tenant platform for the bulk of their workloads, with some level of edge type processing where they need to get real-time data. And obviously there'll be certain sectors that don't need that at all, which is fine. And I think the important piece is finding the right public cloud platform to meet your business needs at the right cost point, because that depreciation piece over time is really important. And if you're not taking advantage of the instant scale or scale down that the hyperscalers give you, then looking at other public cloud options from providers like ourselves is likely to provide a more economic stability point for your business. And to your point, Kyle, that bottom line, if we can reduce the cost of hosting, that reduces the bottom line, therefore that increases profit for the business.
Yeah, and I think just to give a working example for the people listening on this one, so there's a piece of work that we were doing with a customer, a long-standing customer of ours, and they have a cloud-only approach. It's probably the easiest way of putting it, really. And they want everything in a public cloud hyperscaler because that's the strategy that they've had set out for a while. But what they're finding is that the costs are increasing, and they are wanting to decrease that cost a little bit to allow them to reinvest in new innovative capabilities. So the conversation we had was around moving to a hybrid approach, and the answer was, well, we're not backtracking off our strategy. Our strategy is cloud only. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're going to struggle to give you the saving potential that you're asking for, but we'll try our best. And we managed to save some money, right? But then I thought, you know what, I'd be a little bit cheeky. Right? And I would go and say to the individual that I know fairly well in that organization and say, I've come up with a fantastic idea for you that's going to save you, and this is a random figure that I'm using here, £6 million over the next 12 to 18 months. Right? And the individual was like, that's great. Can we do it? It's like, yes, we can. It's called hybrid. Right? So rather than going in and having a conversation about why we should move to hybrid, went in and had a commercial conversation. It says you want to save a specific amount of money because that's the way your business is driving down costs. And I can tell you can meet that metric by doing something different to the way you're doing it today. And that then opens up a different level of business conversation rather than a technology play, which is, am I going to be hybrid or cloud only or cloud first or whatever the terminology is you want to use? And Tim, just to get a view from yourself, are you seeing it from your world? Is hybrid the norm? Is it just marketing messaging? What are we seeing?
Hybrid is, of course, a marketing message to a degree, but it is the norm. And the reason businesses are having to do it is, as I said earlier, the change in how people are working. And I think you both touched on some really important points, is the cost to change. You may have a legacy infrastructure, a legacy application set, a legacy capability, which worked fine while users were local, physically connected, present in the building. But the moment they move away, the experience is degraded to such a degree that it's no longer reliable or realistic to allow users to operate in that way, which means you have to move to a different way of working. Hybrid is obviously that way because the users still come to the office to look at the physical styles of how people operate. They could be in the office physically remote, or they could be anywhere in the globe. The old ways of working require us to change how we present the data, the security. And I think where hybrid really is important is from a user perspective, obviously from my area of focus, from an end user perspective, you have your authentication, you have your application, you have your data. And historically, that could be in 3 different clouds. It could be in 3 different locations. You need to understand is how you're going to present that together to give a seamless, joined up, reliable business continuity approach to the end users. And so, yes, hybrid is required because our workforce is by its very nature hybrid.
Yeah, and that's not just because of the big social experiment of the pandemic, right? I think people were doing that beforehand, but it's just accelerated more capability in that space. And we'll come on to this on the next episode where we start talking about, are people coming back to an office? Is it a 4-day, 3-day working week, weekends, all that kind of stuff, right? Rob, you had something to add there?
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting summary that if you're going to present a strategy to your board, and that strategy is cloud only, and you hang your hat on that, that's your reputation, your career, and the investment of your department's money. I'm pretty sure that none of us have got proper crystal balls. As much as we all would love to think we know what's coming in the future, we probably don't. Acquisition, another pandemic, another war, another supply chain issue, a requirement to expand the business. The unknown of the future means that why wouldn't you build a hybrid strategy, even if you pivot today, 80, 90% of that to one part of that? Why would your strategy not be hybrid? Why would your architecture not have the concepts of deploying in multiple execution environments to allow you to, when the board says, oh, can we go and open an office in, or can we expand to, or can we contract to save money for? Your answer as the IT leader is, yes, because of that hybrid strategy I set with you 2 years ago, we're already ready to meet these new business demands. And I think that's about building that personal reputation in the business and not putting your own job at risk to a degree for a lot of cases. Is why would you not be more open to the possibilities?
And I agree. I think any strategy that I've been helping customers define over the last few years has been future-proof to an extent where it was agile enough for them to refocus, pivot, and change without overhaul, right, of the platforms that they've got. That's the key focus. And Tim, I think you wanted to add something there as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the things we've seen in the way businesses operate now is more and more it's about M&A, mergers and acquisitions, where you're pulling in an organization to build up your own capability. And that's hardly ever something that's shouted from the rooftops or planned, as in we're going to grab this company, which leaves you with that mixed estate. And hybrid is going to come by the fact of you're pulling in another organization. It doesn't matter how quick you use the term Borg, but how quickly you pull that new organization into your organization, you're going to have a hybrid environment. You need to have a strategy to deal with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think let's just jump onto some of the complexities, right? And I'm going to kick off the first one and take some of your limelight, Tim, on the user side of it, right? And that's where I've come from in the past. One of the challenges that we always talk about with hybrid working and hybrid data centers and everything else, or hybrid execution environments, if we want to frame it that way instead, is the data access and the latency between the end user and the services they're consuming. And that's always been a problem, right? And we've had in the past WAN accelerators in environments to allow the network to be optimized. We've had the likes of SD-WAN come out to allow us to do priority traffic management so that people aren't consuming the network with print traffic, as an example, through to then doing virtual apps and desktop solutions with the likes of Omnissa, which used to be VMware, and likes of Citrix, Microsoft AVD, all those kind of things, to allow the data and the application set to reside as close to the source location as possible, right? And then stream that over a effective protocol. So the challenge there really, we summarize from the user perspective, is how do I make sure the user experience is good enough for them to do their job whilst not costing the earth, right? Because you can't have 1,000,001 approaches to deliver an application or desktop, because that just confuses the end user on how they should work or not work, depending on where they're logging in from. So Tim, do you want to just give us a bit of a view on that at a high level, and then Rob, you can kind of cover off the complexity of going hybrid from a platform perspective, because that kind of ties nicely into how the end user would be impacted then as well.
Yeah, I think this is the important bit about seeing this holistically as a whole end to end. I remember to start my career working on the trading floors where the speed of data presented to the end users, they had to be physically present. It was absolutely critical. We now have that workforce, and the way we have to create that experience, we have to start, on the one side, looking at the physical, how do we build this? Another side, the cost drives a lot of choices, but the net result is, how do all of these underlying components tie up to a simple, seamless, almost consumption-based experience to the end user whose expectations are continually moving further forward? They don't like to be told how to work. They want to work how they want to work. We need to understand is how we find that eternal balance to deliver maximum productivity off the back of a correctly sized or designed elastic framework that allows them to work in this way. And there's, I think we're going to touch on the future episodes, but there is so many opportunities to build from one end back to the middle, and similarly from the underlying concepts of the cloud, etc., upwards to meet that expectation.
Yes, I think that to kind of summarize that piece, right, we're going to dive into the workspace in the next episode. And that'll be things like application workspaces, how frontline ambassadors can help drive your organization and things like that, right? So I think then the key summary and takeaway there is that there's not a single approach to delivering applications seamlessly, but what you do need to understand is a service map or a workload map around where things are located from a data and application perspective, and how you can get that user connectivity as close to as possible, or at least as optimized as possible, depending on whether that's possible, because we can only travel to the speed of light in that example. Rob, so from a complexity of going hybrid platform and hybrid cloud, what are we seeing there as the complexities, and has the technology moved on to allow us to actually do this now without it just becoming a massive burden?
I think we are there now, probably in the last 6 months, really, as a lot of these technologies have matured. And I think really it's about understanding what the capabilities of different platforms are. So if you think 5-10 years ago, we wanted to enable our developers to develop faster, easier, without waiting on the different towers of infrastructure to provide a platform for them. And public cloud provided that outcome. Containers, object storage, automation, self-service portals, all of this stuff that enabled the devs to get on with stuff. Not that necessarily that's worked out as well as everyone thinks. I think I saw a McKinsey stat the other week that developers are still only spending about 20% of their time actually developing due to infrastructure challenges. So whether it really worked or not is a different question, but we'll come to that in a second. But I think if we look at where we are today, on-premise or private cloud platforms have all of these capabilities. They are self-service, they are automated, they have S3 storage, they have object storage, they have container capabilities, they have database as a service with open source databases to replace your Oracle and SQL, etc. So we can now enable that developer experience on-prem if it's appropriate. And we've also now got a lot of the orchestration technologies to build that single management platform on top of it to provide consistent network orchestration so that you can define policy once and implement in multiple locations. And we've now got the unified and universal storage capabilities from multiple vendors to allow us to move data to where it needs to be, to enforce consistent data protection policies and consistent management policies to adhere to whatever regulation it is you have to adhere to. So I think the technology is there now, but we have to be very careful that we don't end up adopting technology for technology's sake. So for all of our hybrid talk today, our single mantra is still one execution environment is the place to start, and then you build your business reasons for having more execution environments, because all you're doing by having more is bringing complexity. But if you've got enough workloads, you will find your Amazon point that you said earlier, Kyle, that maybe 50% of it is static now, 50% is burstable. That would be a fantastic hybrid use case as long as you can build the consistent operations across that, rather than having two completely separate teams, because all you're doing is doubling up on resources, doubling up on people, and people are expensive. A lot of the time, the risky part of the operation is if they leave, how do you keep things moving? So yes, there are still challenges. There are lots of things to think about in detail, but most of it is about understanding what technology is actually capable of today in all the different execution environments that exist, so you can make the right choice. And I think there's a lot of people that maybe aren't They don't have the time to get out of their own environments to understand the ecosystem and what is capable. I think that's the exciting things that we can do with customers is show that they are still possible a lot of the time.
Yeah, and that's another great reason why we've started launching this podcast, right? Is so that people can listen to us talk about these things that we see across various customers whilst they're doing their day jobs, right? So you don't have to look at us on screen as well. You can just listen over your headphones in the office. Awesome. So I think we can kind of end it there today, really, on the hybrid world. So back to the title of this session is, has the world gone hybrid? The answer is ultimately yes and no, right? As a true architect kind of fashion, it's a dependent answer. But we are seeing more and more people go towards a hybrid-based strategy ready to allow that multiple execution environments to be generated when needed. And just be very clear on that, what Rob is saying with regards to having a single execution environment doesn't mean you shouldn't have DR, right? Just to be very clear on that one. And we'll cover that in a few episodes' time when we talk about how do you become resilient as an organization across your cyber resiliency and data resiliency. So on that, I'm going to finish this episode, and I really implore you to give us feedback and to catch the next episode. We're going to dive into the 3-day weekend and how hybrid work has started to change the way our users deliver their value to an organization. So again, thank you for joining us today. I've been Kyle Davies.
I've been Rob Sims.
I've been Tim Russell.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.